Next week, for the first time in almost 4 years, Meghan Markle will land on British soil. Prince Archie, 7 years old, and Princess Lilibet, 5, will see the country their father grew up in for the first time since they were toddlers. And King Charles III, 77 years old, 2 years into a cancer diagnosis he has never fully described publicly, will finally get to spend time with grandchildren he has barely met. That is the version of this story the palace would like you to hold in your mind. And honestly, on a human level, it's a version worth holding. Because whatever you think of Harry, whatever you think of Meghan, whatever position you've landed on across 6 years of interviews and books and documentaries and lawsuits, a sick grandfather wanting to know his grandchildren before he runs out of time is not a difficult thing to understand. But that is not the only thing happening here. And according to people inside the royal household who have been speaking to the press over the past several days, it is not even the most significant thing happening here. Because the decision to let the Sussexes come home has apparently cost Charles something. It has cost him his relationship with his heir. It has cost him peace with his wife. And it has been made, according to one source, over the objections of nearly every senior person around him. Let's start with what Charles actually did, because the extent of his personal involvement is genuinely striking. He didn't simply approve a visit. According to reporting, the king personally stepped in to oversee the security arrangements, which have been the single greatest practical obstacle to Harry bringing his family to Britain, and the subject of a long-running legal dispute that Harry has pursued through the British courts. Charles personally arranged the accommodation, offering the Sussexes the use of a royal residence for the duration of their stay. That is not a symbolic gesture. That is crown property, offered to a family that formally exited the working monarchy in 2020, arranged by the monarch himself over what sources describe as significant internal resistance. The insider account of why is not complicated. Charles wants to see his grandchildren. He has made that clear in private conversations throughout this year. The last known meeting between Charles and Harry took place briefly in September, and Harry has since acknowledged publicly that relations were strained at the time, largely because of the ongoing legal fight over his security. That meeting was brief. It did not resolve anything, and in the months since, according to those around him, the king has become steadily less willing to let the years keep passing without knowing Archie and Lilibet as anything other than photographs. But here is what the reporting makes clear, and what has not been widely emphasized. Charles did not do this out of forgiveness. He did it in spite of the absence of forgiveness.
And before agreeing to any of it, he laid down terms. A source described those terms in language that leaves very little room for interpretation. Charles has gone above and beyond to make this visit happen, but nobody should mistake that for blind trust. The reality is that he's taking a huge chance, and he knows it. He's made it very clear to Harry that there cannot be any drama or any hint that this trip is being used for personal gain. If he sees any cameras or gets a whiff of troublemaking, that will be the end of things. Charles is willing to extend an olive branch, but he's not willing to be embarrassed or blindsided again. Read that again, because there are 3 separate conditions embedded in it. No drama, no commercial exploitation, no cameras, and a stated consequence. That will be the end of things. Not the end of the visit, the end of things. That is a father inviting his son home while simultaneously telling him that the invitation is conditional and revocable. It is an olive branch extended with a hand that is visibly braced for impact. And the reason for that bracing is not abstract. It comes from 6 years of specific, documented experiences that have left the king, according to people close to him, deeply wary of exactly the kind of situation he has just personally engineered. Charles is willing to welcome Meghan because she's Harry's wife and the mother of his grandchildren, but that doesn't mean all is forgiven, the source said.
Meghan is still viewed by many as the cause of all the drama, and there's zero trust. Charles has gone against a lot of advice to open this door, and truth be told, most people around him still think it's a huge mistake. This is only happening because it's what Charles wants. But one wrong move on Meghan's part, and any hope of a more permanent reconciliation could disappear overnight. Zero trust. That's the phrase. Not diminished trust, not damaged trust. Zero. And this is where the story stops being about a family reunion and starts being about a monarch who has made a unilateral decision that the people who have stood beside him through the worst years of his life fundamentally disagree with. Because both Queen Camilla and Prince William have reportedly expressed frustration over the move. Not mild reservations, frustration. According to the source, Charles has already paid a price for pushing for this reunion. It's caused so much tension between him and William, and it's got Camilla angry with him too. They're convinced he's taking an unnecessary risk and setting them all up for more agony. Sit with the composition of that opposition for a moment. Camilla, who has stood beside Charles through the entirety of his reign, through his cancer diagnosis, through the collapse of his brother's public life, through every crisis that has hit this institution in the past 4 years.
William, the heir, the man who will inherit whatever version of the monarchy Charles hands him, who has spent 6 years absorbing the public consequences of the Sussexes' departure. Both of them, according to this reporting, are opposed. Both of them are angry. And Charles has done it anyway. Why? The same source is clear about that too, and the answer is not strategic at all. The reality is that Charles has spent years giving Harry and Meghan a very wide berth. He got tired of feeling as though every conversation could somehow come back to haunt him. He's still very burned by all the public airing of grievances that have happened over the years. Fairly or unfairly, there's a strong feeling within the family that Meghan encouraged a lot of it, which is why there's still so much wariness around her. So Charles is burned. Charles is wary. Charles believes, or at least the people around him believe, that Meghan drove much of what happened. And Charles has invited her into a royal residence anyway, because the alternative is dying without knowing his grandchildren. That is not a strategic calculation. That is a man weighing an institution against a family and choosing, for perhaps the first time in his public life, the family. Now, here is the piece of context that makes the king's specific conditions, no cameras, no personal gain, no troublemaking, feel less like paranoia and more like a direct response to something that actually happened.
In April, Harry and Meghan traveled to Australia. During that trip, Meghan met with children at a hospital. Terminally ill children who had come out to see her specifically because she is a member, or was a member, of the British royal family. Photographs were taken. And subsequently, an AI-powered fashion platform that Meghan invested in earlier this year, a platform that allows her to create a page effectively selling the outfits she wears to fans, receiving between 10 and 20% of the profit if they buy through the app, advertised the dress Meghan had worn to that hospital visit. The children were visible in the photograph used. The image was later removed. Royal author Tom Sykes described the incident as sickening. A further source put it more bluntly. The idea that these terminally ill children have come out to greet you because you're a member of the royal family, and hours later you're promoting your hospital look for money? The Queen never would have imagined this could happen, because it's just basic human decency. Meghan's spokesperson responded to the reporting directly, and it's worth giving that response in full because it does address the mechanics of what happened. Meghan wore that outfit all day during daytime hours yesterday, including times when she was enjoying Sydney and on a boating trip.
One-Off does sometimes pull images of stars from Getty, but Meghan's team has been working closely with them to make sure they're using approved photography and correcting as needed. So the explanation is that the app pulled images automatically from a stock photography service and that the team has been working to correct the practice. Whether you find that explanation adequate probably depends on where you already stood. What is not in dispute is that the image appeared, that it was removed, and that the incident happened 3 months before the king was asked to approve a visit that would place Meghan back inside British royal property. And then, earlier this month, it was reported that Meghan's page on that same platform is now selling outfits she previously wore to the Invictus Games. The Invictus Games, Harry's own charity. The organization that exists to support wounded and injured service personnel, veterans who train and compete as part of their recovery. The same event that is the stated reason for the entire July visit. A source described the reaction. She's blurring the lines between philanthropy and personal profit. If the money she made was going back to Invictus, there'd be no questions asked. But the money is going into her account, and that is absolutely raising eyebrows. It's seen as very bad form. Now put that alongside Charles's conditions again.
No hint that this trip is being used for personal gain.
If he sees any cameras or gets a whiff of troublemaking, that will be the end of things. Those conditions were not drafted in a vacuum. They read as a direct, itemized response to the last 6 months of Sussex commercial activity, delivered by a man who has decided that the price of seeing his grandchildren is putting himself in a position where he could be embarrassed again. Harry, for his part, is reportedly pushing back on the entire framing. According to the source, Harry has begged Charles to give Meghan a fair chance and stop assuming the worst because of all these distorted narratives. That phrase, distorted narratives, appears to be how Harry characterizes the reporting around Meghan's commercial ventures. And in fairness to that position, it is a phrase that carries some weight. The British tabloid ecosystem's treatment of Meghan has been the subject of successful legal action by Harry, and a great deal of what has been written about her over 8 years has been demonstrably unfair. He is not making that argument from nowhere. But Charles, according to the same reporting, is not persuaded. Charles isn't about to switch off his instincts. He knows if this all goes wrong, it will be on his shoulders, and he simply can't afford another disaster. That's why there will be no shortage of people keeping a close eye on how things unfold.
Charles will have his trusted aides reporting back to him about how Meghan is conducting herself and whether there are any signs of trouble brewing. So the arrangement, stripped of diplomatic language, appears to be this. Meghan is welcome, Meghan will be watched, aides will report back, and if the reports are bad, according to a source, all bets are off. The phrase that has cut through everything else in this reporting, the one that will end up in every headline about this visit, came from an insider describing the mood inside the palace walls. There's a lot of concern about her tendency to throw her weight around, and Charles wants to be absolutely sure that doesn't happen this time. The hope is that everyone behaves and they get through the visit without incident, but behind palace walls, there's still a feeling that Meghan is a potential bomb waiting to go off. A bomb waiting to go off. That is how the king's own household is reportedly describing the mother of his grandchildren, days before she arrives at a residence he personally arranged for her. I want to be honest about what all of this is and isn't. Every quotation in this story comes from unnamed sources speaking to the press. None of it has been confirmed by Buckingham Palace, by Kensington Palace, or by the Sussexes. Palace insiders have their own agendas, and the British press has an established and legally documented history of unfair coverage of Meghan specifically. Some of what is being said about her right now is almost certainly being said by people who would prefer this visit did not happen at all, and who benefit from it going badly. But here is what is not in dispute, because it is a matter of public record. Charles arranged the security. Charles arranged the residence. Charles pushed this through. And he did it, according to every account available, against the wishes of his wife and his heir, at what one source described as a cost he has already begun paying. Meghan marked Father's Day this month with a photograph of Harry and their children, Archie wearing an England football shirt, a gesture some read as a quiet acknowledgement of the trip to come. It's a small thing, a child's shirt, but in a family where every visual choice is scrutinized for meaning, it was noticed. Next week, they land. Charles will get his grandchildren. William will not be there. Camilla will be somewhere in the building, reportedly furious about the whole thing. Aides will be watching Meghan and reporting back to the king. And the entire future of the relationship between Charles and his youngest son will depend on whether a 2-week visit passes without a single photograph, a single commercial post, or a single moment that anyone inside those walls can construe as a wrong move. The king has bet his relationship with his heir on this. He has bet his peace with his wife on it. And by every account, the people around him think he has bet wrong. We'll find out next week.